Welcome to BBC News, broadcasting to viewers in North America and around the globe. I'm Regid Ahmed, our top stories. The American adult film actress Stormy Daniels, who claims to have had an affair with Donald Trump, says she received threats to keep quiet. A fire at a shopping centre in Siberia has killed nearly 40 people. Dozens more are missing. Protests erupt across Catalonia after the region's former leader is arrested in Germany at the request of Spain. A crisis in Australian cricket as the scandal over ball tampering sends shockwaves through the world of sport. And tech companies versus journalism in the digital age. We report from Google's headquarters in Silicon Valley. The adult film actress Stormy Daniels says she's received threats to keep quiet about an affair she says she had with Donald Trump. Mr. Trump has denied any relationship with Ms. Daniels. Well, let's go straight to our North America correspondent James Cook, who's watched the interview, and speak to him now. He's live in LA. James, what did she have to say? Stormy Daniels there speaking to 60 Minutes CBS with Anderson Cooper, and we heard earlier from our North America correspondent James Cook. Now, if you do want to know a lot more about the background to this story, how we got where we are, just go to our website, bbc.com/news, and I'm sure there's more to run with that story. We'll bring you any developments. Around 40 people are thought to have been killed in a fire at a shopping centre in Russia. It's feared the death toll could rise, with at least 60 more still missing, including many children. 300 firefighters were called to tackle the flames, which spread quickly through the building in the Siberian city of Kemerovo. Andrew Plant reports. Now, after a week in which the pressure on Facebook affected shares in other tech giants too, Google has put more money towards its collaboration with the news industry, including trying to combat misinformation and fake news. Although Google's dominance of online advertising revenue has put many news organisations under pressure, the company says working with them is the key to the future. Our media editor Amal Rajan reports from inside the Google campus in Silicon Valley. World Cricket's governing body says the sport needs to take a hard look at itself after the ball tampering scandal that's engulfed the Australian team. The captain, Steve Smith, has been banned from playing in the final test match in South Africa after he admitted knowing about a plan for a teammate to manipulate the ball in a way that is against the rules of the game. Australia's Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull has said he's shocked and disappointed, and there are still questions for the wider leadership of the team. And that was Alexander Downer, Australia's High Commissioner to the UK. Now, earlier we spoke to Australian sports presenter Bill Woods about how the scandal is affecting the image of cricket in the country and what kind of reaction there's been so far. Well, James Knight has been reporting on and writing about Australian cricket for more than 25 years, including a couple of biographies of well-known players, and he joins me now from Sydney. James, thanks very much for your time. Cricket as a sport is known for players pushing the envelope, looking for an advantage. The Australian team is known for doing that. In that context, do you think Australia's overreacting a little bit about this incident?
In combination with a lot of other things that have happened during this South African series, we've seen a lot of unsavoury incidents throughout the series that pushed us closer to the edge of the cliff. And this is the one that has pushed us over. So no, I don't think it's an overreaction. Of course, ball tampering isn't new to world cricket. It's sort of like the elephant in the room. We know it's done. We know it's done at a lot of levels. But the way it was done this time, it was so calculated. It was the Australian captain and the so-called leadership group asking the most junior member of the team to do it. And it's very, in typical Australian fashion, un-Australian. It's not how you do it, mate.
The incident itself has been widely criticised, but is there a context to it? I mean, this particular competition with South Africa has been described as ill-tempered. There were a lot of incidents leading up to it. Can that explain perhaps some of the behaviour of the Australians, even though it can't necessarily be excused?
It's an interesting point. I think the Australian cricket team is the team that many Australians now love to hate. And that may be strong, but there's a bit of tall poppy syndrome there where we like to bring down the most successful players. But importantly, I think the Australian cricket team is a very good example of a professional team living in a bubble. And they really have a disconnection with the greater public, in this case, the Australian public, and on a world scene as well. And they probably believe they can behave in a way that they really don't have to be accountable for, but this time they certainly do.
It's been around a day since the incident happened. Can you tell us more about the players involved? Because we've heard a lot of recriminations, but Steve Smith, Bancroft, as players, what are their characters like? What do we know about their past behaviour?
There's going to be a lot of mudslinging, and some of it will stick. Steve Smith is an ultra-competitive player. His success, his record speaks for that. He's one of the most successful batsmen in the world, and typical of the Australian sporting culture, and typical particularly of the Australian sporting culture. He wants to win. But no, he's a good person. He's a good bloke. What pushed him over the limit? Well, I put it back to just being in that bubble again. Cameron Bancroft, from all reports, he's a junior member of the team. He's finding his way. So there's been no skeletons in closets or anything like that. It's just, for whatever reason, come at the hour, come at the moment, and this is what we're dealing with.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the Australian reaction? I mean, we're hearing one legendary cricket commentator seem to cry on air when talking about this incident. It's being taken very personally in Australia.
Of course, we're talking about the great ABC commentator Jim Maxwell there, and it's woven into our fabric. Cricket is woven into our fabric, and although we are changing culturally and we've got a more diverse culture in Australia now, it still is a very traditional thing to do to follow the fortunes of the Australian cricket team. It's been well said that the captain of the Australian cricket team has the second highest profile, only behind that of our Prime Minister. I don't think that's quite right, but nevertheless, we still embrace the values of what our Australian cricket team has done over the years. But the world is changing, Australia is changing along with it. And the behaviours of yesteryear are now put more so under a microscope. And as a result, we are not perhaps as tolerant of them as we should be. And that really has lit the wick for quite an extraordinary reaction in Australia right now. Across all the media, it's wall to wall. In my time following cricket in Australia, I have not seen a reaction quite like this. And that goes back to the underarm incident with the Chappell brothers way back nearly 40 years ago. This is a quite extraordinary moment.
Just very briefly, because we have very little time left, but what is going to satisfy the fans? What has to happen to Smith and Bancroft?
Well, I think there will be a bit of sympathy for Bancroft. Smith has to go, and I think a lot of pressure has to be placed on the top of the Australian Cricket Administration, James Sutherland, because he's allowed a lot to slip through during his time.
James Knight, cricket writer in Sydney, thank you very much. Sorry to cut you off, but we've run out of time. Much more on the website, bbc.com/news. See you soon.